Hi there, I'm Michelle at Herbert Johnson Hatters. I get asked a lot of questions by both customers and other hatters, and mostly about the properties of felt. How do I make a choice as a hat wearer as to what type of felt I want in my hat, or how much I want to rely on certain supplies? So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about felt and how it can have a knock-on effect, and certain properties are desirable in certain hats and other properties desirable in other hats. So first of all, what is felt? Felt is a material that doesn't have a warp and a weft. It's basically fibres that are meshed together tightly and with little air spaces between. It makes it a really versatile and beautiful material to use, especially as a hatter. So we use blanks. So these come in different shapes, different fibres, different weights, and they all have different properties as a result, and have different finishes. So you would choose one over the other depending on what you were making and how you wanted it to look. So the things that can affect how a felt behaves, feels, looks are the weight of it, the density of the fibre, the molecular structure of the fibre, the content, so whether or not it's a fur felt, a wool felt, a synthetic, that kind of thing, the finish on it, the final finish, and also, not many people consider this, but the conditions you're wearing it in. So whether or not you're in a humid and hot area or a dry and cool area, your hat will the same hat will react very differently in those conditions. Basically because the air in between the fibres are affected by atmosphere. So that's the beauty and the downside of fur felts or felt materials. So felt is made in the manufacturing stage by throwing a certain weight of felt into a capsule with a cone with holes in, and there's a downdraft system, so it sucks the hair onto this cone and makes the basic shape, and then under certain processes of chemicals, heat and agitation, those will get meshed tighter and tighter and tighter, and you'll end up with the basic blanks that we use in hat making. So there are three basic weights or general weights that you can buy felts in at. There's a lightweight, a dress weight, and a western weight. So you've probably heard these terms. So this one here, this one is a lightweight felt. This one is a 75 gram. I would normally expect a lightweight to come in under 100 grams per blank. So the weight is the amount of fibre that gets thrown into that machine that I just described, and that's the beginning weight of the fibre, and then they will come out as either a cone shape, a flare, or a capilline, depending on what you're going to make at the end of it. So this is a lightweight felt. So under 100 grams, this one's 75, and it's for travelling weight hats. So something that you would throw into your suitcase, your rucksack, into your pocket, and it's crushable, versatile, not great at holding its shape, but good enough. It makes it a really easygoing, great to travel with hat. You often find hats with no liners and with a soft head fitting, so it can aid in the crushability of the hat. So very versatile, very useful, and lightweight, so it's not too warm and just does the job of protecting your head. So you won't find too many reeded sweatbands in this kind of a hat. The next weight is your dress weight. So that's the most commonly used for everyday wear. So fashion hats will be a dress weight hat. So this particular one is 100% rabbit in a standard pounced finish. And you'd normally expect a dress weight to come in at 110 to 140 grams, that kind of weight. That's pretty standard. They're really easy to work with, you get lots of different finishes, and you can get them in different fibre contents. Then you've got your western weights. Now I would expect a western weight to be 180 grams, 200 grams, a lot heavier This means they're quite difficult to work with, they're quite heavy. They're made for hats that are more rigid and that do a job. They're there to protect your head and for going out in all weathers, and they're there to be versatile, to keep their shape, and they're there for their strength. So they're working hats, and that's why they're more dense. And they're normally in beaver felts and nutria felts, those kind of fibres, because they've got to do a hard job there. So that's a little bit about weights. Next I want to talk to you about the density of the fibres. So these two here are dress weight hoods. This one is 100% rabbit, this one is 100% beaver. They react differently even though they're the same weight. So the density on a rabbit is less tight than the beaver fur felt. The beaver fur felt on a molecular level is very different from a rabbit fibre. It has different properties, and because the beaver is an animal that spends a lot of time in the water, those properties are inherent at a molecular level in those fibres. So if you want something that is silkier and more water repellent, beaver is a good option to go for, because on a molecular level the fibres will mesh much more densely than a rabbit, which will retain a lot of the air between it. So in comparison, rabbit is a lot easier to work with because it will move around and you've got more air to make the fibres move and be elastic. So it's a great felt to work with. There's more resistance in a beaver felt because of how dense those fibres can get. So it's more difficult to work with, but it's still joyful. But it's so useful because there's less air in there. So it's a tighter, smoother finish, and you've got that water repellent aspect to it, which is very desirable. So you've got your rabbit fibres and your beaver fibres, but you've also got mixes of fibres. So you want the properties of one fibre and another property of another fibre, you can have a mix. So quite often you'll see things that are only part mix of beaver or part mix of rabbit. Things like hair, so H-A-R-E, will get thrown in because they're very lustrous fibres. They pick up the light, so you'll get different tonalities and it will look very sumptuous and luxurious. So hair is a good one for a mix. You sometimes see a mink mix. Different fibres will get thrown in there, not as the main body, but just to highlight the feel and how the light reacts and how the dye takes to a certain length. So you'll get all of those advantages just by having a mix. As well, we'll have different finishes. So the look and the feel of a hat gets affected by what type of finish you've gone for. So a lot of hats will be a standard pounced finish, but you can also get things like a peach bloom. So this is like a fuzzy, just like a peach, a fuzzy effect, really soft to the feel, makes the tones look really deep and luxurious, very nice and soft. Similar to a peach bloom, you can get a velour or a suede effect, and you can also get these long-haired effects. So these can look rough, choppy and fluffy, or you can brush them down to make them smooth and pick up the light and shine. So you can get a lot of versatility out of something like this. And this one is a melusine, and that's another name for a long-haired rabbit. You can get really nice hair mixes in this, and that picks up the light and makes it look really deep and luxurious. So those are the types of finishes. I also mentioned that the conditions that you wear your hat in can really affect how your hat reacts, how it moves, and how long it lasts between a reblocking service. So if you're in a hot and humid area, your hat will move. Now, when I spoke about how felt is a lovely material to use, it becomes malleable when you put heat and steam. So what you're doing is expanding the air pockets between the fibres, making it more pliable. Now, if you're wearing a completed hat in those conditions, in extreme conditions of heat and humidity, your hat will move all by itself. So the more air between the fibres in the hat that you're wearing, the more movement you will get just naturally. So you may have to pay attention to reshaping it a bit more often than you would if you were living in cooler or wearing it in cooler and drier climes. So that's something to consider about the way a hat will react in certain atmospheres. I'm just going to do a little test here that you might enjoy. So I've got a bucket and some water, and I'm going to take the beaver and a rabbit fur felt, and I'm going to show you the different properties of both the fibres and the density, to show you why you choose one over the other in really heavy wet weather. So this is a rabbit. So if I'm going to take some water here and just pour it down the rabbit, you see it just pours off, but it will eventually over time, so I'm going to do it on the other side now and fill it up with water, it will eventually soak through. So I've poured some water into that, and you will see that eventually it will start to permeate through. So I can see the colour changing, so it's going darker, so it's saturating into the water, the pockets between the fibres, and it's getting in there and soaking through. So although it has some resistance, so it will sheet off, and it's really good quality fibre to use in hat wearing, it's nowhere near as resilient as the dense fibre of the beaver fur felt. So if I left this here, there we are, you can see it's starting to drip through. So that's taken a little while, but it's dripping through, and you can see the colour change in there. It's got a darker section where it's saturated. So it's great in light weather, but it will eventually soak in and get into your hat. I'll do the same in the beaver fur felt here. So I'm going to fill that up, and this it's much better at sheeting off. You can see how that's just pulling off. It will take a lot longer than the rabbit to soak through. It's much easier to just sheet off and not cause a discoloration. So that's a fun thing you can do at home, probably not with anything with a liner in it. Just do it on the outside and see how it sheets off. Another thing that you can do to protect your hat in all weathers, if you are expecting to get a lot of weather, a lot of rain, is use something that's appropriate for maybe shoes, suede and leathers. There's a spray that you can put on. You can top that up as you like, as you wear it, and that will protect your hat from a lot of weather. So I hope you've enjoyed my talk on felt, the fibres, different properties, why would you choose one felt over another, and why you would expect certain qualities in one hat over another due to the different fibres and the felt content. I'm just going to finish today by a quick shout out to Wested for the shirt and the trousers, to Brian Lalonde of Screen Capped for the lovely leatherwork and the whip holder, and my friend Mark for the lovely gift of the tank bag. Thank you for watching. Take care.